The man captured on that doorbell camera did not act alone. Two suspects, two separate DNA profiles, and one chilling conspiracy stretching back nearly 2 decades are about to be exposed in a way that will permanently change everything you think you know about this case. Welcome back to Cold Case History. I am going to walk you through every detail of this case: the footage, the forensics, the suspect behavior, the DNA, and the digital evidence trail. If you are new here, subscribe now and hit the notification bell. We cover every update on cases like this one the moment they break. And trust me, this one is not finished breaking yet. Let's begin at the beginning. On the night of January 31st, an 84-year-old woman named Nancy Guthrie disappeared from her home nestled in the Catalina foothills on the outskirts of Tucson, Arizona. Her son-in-law, TOMMASO CIONI, told investigators he had driven her home himself, dropping her off safely at her front door at approximately 9:50 in the evening following what he described as a completely ordinary family dinner. That moment, 9:50 p.m., became the last confirmed instance of Nancy Guthrie being seen alive by anyone. And right there, before the story even properly begins, the darkness starts creeping in. Because at 1:47 in the morning, the Nest doorbell camera mounted at Nancy's front entrance was manually disconnected. Not a power outage, not a technical glitch. Someone physically reached out and cut the eyes off that porch in the dead of night. Between those two timestamps, the drop-off and the camera going dark, sits a gap of nearly 4 unaccounted hours. 4 hours with no surveillance footage. 4 hours with no witnesses on record. 4 hours during which the last known person to see Nancy Guthrie breathing has no confirmed and verified alibi. In criminal investigation, 4 hours is not merely an inconvenience for a timeline. It is an eternity of possibility. It is more than enough time to return home, wait for the street to go completely quiet, change your clothing, drive back across the city, and carry out a plan that someone had been constructing in the shadows for months. Naturally, investigators turned their attention toward the son-in-law. And when you begin pulling the publicly available records surrounding TOMMASO CIONI and laying them flat on a table beside the documented facts of this crime, what you find is not vaguely suspicious. It is precise. It is specific. It is the kind of circumstantial alignment that makes the hair on the back of your neck stand straight up. Exactly 8 months before his mother-in-law was snatched from her own home in a kidnapping that would generate a ransom demand of $6 million in cryptocurrency, TOMMASO CIONI signed and filed a durable power of attorney. That document quietly handed complete legal authority over his personal and financial affairs to his wife, Annie. Legal professionals will point out that durable powers of attorney are regularly filed as standard estate planning instruments. They are not inherently suspicious, but context changes everything in criminal investigations. When you set that document directly beside the timeline of a $6 million kidnapping targeting his wife's elderly mother, the narrative shifts immediately and dramatically. It no longer reads like routine planning. It reads like a man who was getting his house in perfect legal order before stepping off the edge of something irreversible and catastrophic. It reads like someone building themselves a clean landing pad before igniting everything around them. And then there is the gate. Anyone who has spent time in the desert residential communities outside Tucson will tell you that security gates are not decorative features out there. Every front entrance is protected by a heavy iron gate, bolted and locked, specifically engineered to prevent exactly the kind of forced nighttime intrusion that allegedly occurred at Nancy Guthrie's home. These gates do not budge. They do not yield to casual pressure. But in the doorbell footage released to the public, the masked figure approaching the front door does not force the gate. There is no prying. There are no bolt cutters. There is no shoulder thrown against the metal. He moves through that gate the way a person moves through a door they already knew was going to be open. He walks through it smoothly, quietly, without hesitation, as if someone with intimate knowledge of that property had ensured he would face no obstacle when he arrived. Think carefully about what that tells you. A stranger does not bypass a locked security gate in the dark without leaving scratches, without creating noise, without any physical evidence of forced entry, unless the gate was already waiting open for him. That is not a detail that fits the profile of a random predator choosing an opportunistic target. That is the fingerprint of inside knowledge. So the pressure on TOMMASO CIONI was building. The 4-hour gap in his alibi. The power of attorney filed 8 months before. The gate that offered no resistance. The fact that he personally knew the camera at that address ran without a paid cloud storage subscription, meaning the footage existed only locally and could be erased completely the moment the device was physically disconnected. Every arrow was pointing in one direction. And then the FBI released a single detail that obliterated the single suspect theory entirely. Federal investigators released an official physical description of the masked individual captured on the doorbell footage. According to that profile, the suspect stands between 5 feet 9 inches and 5 feet 10 inches tall, with an average and unremarkable build. Now go and look at any publicly available photograph of TOMMASO CIONI standing in proximity to other people. He is clearly, obviously, and significantly taller than 5 feet 10. He cannot be the person on that porch. Physically impossible. That one measurement did not exonerate him. It revealed something far more dangerous. It revealed that whoever engineered this plan never intended to be the one standing at that front door. He was the architect, and somewhere in his world, there was an operative, someone whose physical profile matched the job, someone whose history gave him the skills to carry it out, someone he trusted completely. And that search leads directly to one name. In April of 2007, a newly arrived TOMMASO CIONI responded to a Craigslist advertisement posted by a local musician looking for bandmates. That advertisement had been placed by a drummer named Dominic Evans. The two connected immediately. Together, they built an independent rock band called Early Black and spent years performing at local venues, rehearsing, recording, and sharing the kind of time that turns two strangers into something that functions more like brothers. That friendship did not last a year or two. It lasted 19 years. 19 years is not a casual acquaintance you exchange pleasantries with at a reunion. It is nearly 2 decades of shared history, mutual trust, and access to every intimate corner of each other's lives. Dominic Evans would have known the layout of the Guthrie home. He would have known the family dynamics, the financial situation, the daily schedule, the security setup. When you spend 19 years in someone's orbit, you absorb the architecture of their entire world without even trying. There are no secrets left after that length of time. But there is one detail from that shared musical history that lands like ice water when you hear it today. Early Black released a studio album, and the title they chose for that record, years ago, now reads with a bone-deep chill in the context of everything that followed. They called it Life, Love, Murder. If you're still here, subscribe, because cases like this only work when people stay. And tell us where you're watching from. I love seeing my global family represent. Drop your country or city in the comments. Now let me show you why Dominic Evans is not simply a name attached to a suspicious friendship. He is the piece of this puzzle that makes every fragment of evidence click into alignment with terrifying accuracy. When you pull the publicly available court records filed under his name in Pima County, you are not looking at parking violations or expired registration citations. You are looking at documented felony charges for burglary and robbery, not misdemeanors. Felonies. And the criminal psychology embedded in those two specific charges is something that deserves careful and deliberate examination, because it tells you exactly what kind of person carries them on their record. Burglary, by its legal definition, is the act of entering a private structure unlawfully with the specific intention of committing a crime once inside. It is a skill set built on silence, patience, spatial awareness in darkness, and the ability to move through an unfamiliar environment without disturbing a single sleeping person or triggering a single sensor. Robbery is something entirely different and far more confrontational. Robbery places you directly in front of another human being who is terrified and unpredictable, and it demands that you dominate that situation through psychological force and physical intimidation until that person completely surrenders to your control. Now take both of those criminal skill sets and layer them on top of each other. The silent, ghost-like penetration of a seasoned burglar combined with the controlled physical violence of a practiced robber. What you construct is the exact and precise operational profile required to enter a secluded desert home in the deepest hours of the night and forcefully remove an 84-year-old woman from her bed without waking the neighbors, without leaving the door kicked in, and without losing control of the situation at any point during the abduction. Then there is the forensic detail that most casual observers completely overlooked while fixating on the backpack and the awkwardly worn holster. Former FBI Supervisory Special Agent and criminal profiler Jim Clementi reviewed the doorbell footage with the methodical precision of a career investigator. While the internet was busy debating the choice of gear, Clementi was watching the suspect's hands. Specifically, he noted what appears to be a distinct permanent marking, consistent with a tattoo, visible on the suspect's bare right wrist as he reaches toward the camera. Dedicated investigators following the case online then went and pulled archive performance footage of Early Black playing live at small local venues. In those recordings, Dominic Evans is visible behind his drum kit, and on his lower right wrist, there is a dark and prominent tattoo inked permanently into the same precise location. The same wrist, the same position. When you place that visual detail alongside the FBI's official height estimate of 5 feet 9, with an average build, the convergence stops being coincidence and starts being a blueprint. But there is more. And this particular detail demonstrates a level of criminal sophistication that is genuinely unsettling to sit with. On the night of January 23rd, 9 full days before Nancy Guthrie disappeared, a resident in the same general area of Tucson uploaded a clip to a neighborhood safety application. The footage showed an unidentified male in a dark hooded sweatshirt and a backpack walking backward up a residential driveway in the pitch dark. That house sat 6.5 miles from Nancy Guthrie's front door, walking backward up a stranger's driveway in the middle of the night. Most people who encounter that detail dismiss it as bizarre behavior. But when you understand the technology behind residential security cameras, what that person was doing becomes horrifyingly deliberate. Consumer doorbell and driveway cameras use infrared motion sensors that require approximately 1 to 2 seconds to register movement, wake from their idle state, and calibrate their lenses to the extreme low light conditions of a dark residential street at that hour. By walking backward into the camera's detection zone intentionally, this individual was exploiting that exact technical lag window. In those first critical seconds while the camera was warming up and adjusting, all it captured was the anonymous rear of a dark hoodie. By the time the lens reached full recording clarity, the face was already outside the frame, permanently invisible. This was not a confused person wandering through the wrong neighborhood. This was a field test, a dress rehearsal executed 9 days before the actual operation to measure the response time and coverage limitations of the residential surveillance infrastructure in the target area. And here is the dimension of that rehearsal that makes it even more damning than it already is. You cannot run a backward-walking camera test drill on a stranger's dark driveway alone. You are completely blind to what is happening behind you. You cannot see patrol cars rounding the corner. You cannot watch for lights turning on in neighboring houses. You cannot track the neighborhood's overall response to the activity. You need a second person, someone sitting in a parked vehicle down the street, watching the perimeter, timing the approach, and signaling if anything changes. The rehearsal footage does not imply 2 perpetrators. It functionally requires 2 perpetrators. And the forensic evidence confirmed exactly that. Investigators announced the recovery of 2 completely separate and distinct biological DNA profiles connected to this crime. The first was recovered from inside Nancy Guthrie's home. The second was extracted from a discarded black nitrile glove found on a roadside approximately 2 miles from the scene. 2 profiles. 2 individuals. A coordinated operation, not a lone actor. And that nitrile glove carries its own weight in this story. Nitrile gloves are not items most households keep in drawers next to the car keys. They are standard equipment in scientific laboratories and medical environments. They are precisely the type of protective glove that an advanced placement biology teacher would store in bulk in his classroom, in his supply cabinet, or in boxes sitting quietly in his garage at home. The architect supplied the operational equipment. The operative put it on his hands and made the irreversible mistake of discarding it in a panic somewhere along the escape route. Right now, federal investigators are running both of those biological profiles through investigative genetic genealogy, the most powerful forensic identification technology available to modern law enforcement. This is the same scientific methodology that unmasked the Golden State Killer more than 30 years after his crimes. The process does not require either suspect's DNA to be sitting in a national criminal database waiting to be matched. Investigators only need a distant relative, a cousin, a great-aunt, someone who submitted a saliva sample to any commercial ancestry platform, to have their DNA already in the system. From that single distant connection, genealogists build outward, tracing family branches through generations, narrowing the tree branch by branch until the lines converge on specific individuals living at specific addresses. Those trees are being constructed right now, and DNA does not negotiate. It does not forget. It does not protect the people it exposes. But the biological trap is not the only wall closing in. Federal agents are simultaneously executing a comprehensive cell tower data extraction covering 2 specific nights, January 23rd and February 1st. A cell tower dump captures the complete identification record of every single mobile device that connected to the towers covering a defined geographic area during a defined window of time. Every call, every message, every silent background ping from a device that simply existed in proximity to a tower, all of it logged permanently in the system. On the night of February 1st, the actual night of the kidnapping, the suspects almost certainly left their personal phones at home intentionally. They were executing a rehearsed and carefully constructed operation. They understood exactly what they were doing. Their devices sat on nightstands at their home addresses all night, manufacturing a clean and tidy digital alibi. But January 23rd was a different night entirely. That was a rehearsal that was never supposed to be discovered. Nobody was ever meant to know it happened. They felt invisible and untraceable that night, moving through quiet streets in their own vehicles, phones in their pockets, casually pinging towers along the entire route without registering any concern. Because why would they? They believed that date would never appear on any investigator's radar. Federal agents are now cross-referencing the device data from both nights, hunting for the same phone numbers appearing near the rehearsal location 9 days before the crime and near the crime scene on the night of the abduction. If two phones registered to two men who have spent 19 years in each other's lives pinged together at both locations on both nights, there is no explanation that survives courtroom scrutiny. And then there are the ransom communications. Multiple emails demanding millions in Bitcoin were delivered to TMZ from an anonymous sender. And the language used inside those messages reveals something critically important about the psychology of the person typing them. The sender referred specifically to the main individual who took Nancy Guthrie. That phrasing is not the language of a person describing their own solo actions. You do not call yourself the main individual. That phrase reflects awareness of a hierarchy, a primary player and secondary participants, an architect and an operative. The sender also wrote that they were gambling with their own personal safety and standing dangerously close to the flame. That is not the confident declaration of a criminal mastermind operating from a position of power and control. That is the fractured psychology of a panicking accomplice who knows exactly how this was designed, knows exactly who sits at the center of it, and is desperately trying to negotiate some distance from the explosion before the entire structure collapses on top of them. The cracks in the psychological armor are already visible. The forensic machinery is already in motion, and both men have gone completely silent since this investigation intensified. No press statements, no social media, no tearful television appearances declaring their innocence to a sympathetic anchor. When two men who have shared 19 years of the closest friendship go dark simultaneously at the exact moment federal investigators begin circling, that coordinated silence has a name. It is called consciousness of guilt. It is the behavior of people who are not confused. It is the behavior of people who are afraid. But silence cannot outrun the science. It cannot outrun cell tower logs that record every device movement across an entire city without ever being asked. And it absolutely cannot outrun a $200,000 reward currently hanging over this case, drawing the attention of everyone inside and outside the criminal orbit surrounding these two men. Loyalty forged over 19 years of shared music, shared secrets, and shared late-night conversations feels unbreakable when the pressure has not arrived yet. It feels like something permanent, like something biological. But it is not. It never is. When federal investigators sit down across a cold metal table from a scared person and calmly place genealogical DNA matches and overlapping cell tower coordinates in front of them, 19 years of loyalty evaporates faster than rain hitting a superheated Arizona highway in the dead of July. Someone always breaks. Someone always decides that the first person to speak is the person who gets the deal. And with $200,000 in reward money and a federal kidnapping charge waiting on the other side of silence, the question is not whether someone talks. The question is who gets there first. Nancy Guthrie remains missing. Her family wakes up every single morning inside a nightmare that has no boundary and no visible end. But the science does not sleep. The genealogical analysis is processing right now inside a secure laboratory. The cell tower cross-referencing is actively being built, record by record. And every thread examined throughout this investigation. The 4-hour window, the iron gate that offered no resistance, the power of attorney signed 8 months before the crime, the height that does not match, the 19-year bond forged on Craigslist, the felony record that reads like an operational resume, the matching tattoo on the right wrist, the backward walking dress rehearsal 9 days before the abduction, the 2 separate DNA profiles, the nitrile glove discarded in the dark, the digital cell tower trap, and the panicked anonymous emails exposing a hierarchy. Every single thread leads back to the same devastating conclusion. This was never random. It was never opportunistic. It was a surgically engineered operation designed by someone who knew this family from the inside and executed by someone whose criminal history made him the sharpest tool available for the job. The biology does not lie. The towers do not forget. And the truth is moving toward both of them faster than either can run. If this case matters to you, do not keep it to yourself. Share this video with someone who needs to see it right now. Every share keeps the pressure on and keeps Nancy Guthrie's name in front of the people who can help bring her home. Subscribe to Cold Case History and turn on your notifications, because when the DNA results come back, when the cell tower data breaks, when someone finally decides to talk, you will hear it here before anywhere else. The final chapter of this story is being written inside a laboratory right now, and when those results come back, absolutely everything changes. Nancy Guthrie deserves answers. Stay with us until she gets them.